Mangroves comprise several species of trees and shrubs that grow along sheltered intertidal shores, mainly in tropical and subtropical coastal waterways. However, in eastern Australia, mangroves do extend along temperate coastlines where their distribution overlaps with salt marsh communities. In these instances, mangroves usually establish in low elevation sites where inundation is more frequent. Australia has 39 mangrove species, which is more than half the global number. Biotic and abiotic factors. The mangrove ecosystem is home to many different organisms. These organisms are only able to live and thrive in the mangroves because of certain biotic and abiotic factors. Water salinity, the sodium and chloride, salt, in the ecosystem is toxic to plants and mangroves. To survive, the mangroves must somehow get rid of it. For example, the black mangrove sheds its salt on its leaves. Water, the water in most mangrove ecosystems is the sea. Because of tides, the mangroves get flooded twice a day. When not flooded, the mangroves must take in oxygen to function with their aerial roots. Temperature, because plants are generally the temperature of the air around them, they can get extremely hot and cold. If mangroves are too hot or too cool, it can be dangerous. To avoid this, mangroves have reflective properties on their leaves to deflect sunlight. Light, too much or too little light can badly affect the mangroves. Too much means temperature fluctuations, and too little means the plant will starve. Biotic factors. Plants, any palms, trees, shrubs, and ferns in the mangrove. Aquatic animals, when a mangrove branch falls to the ground, it provides a good habitat for any marine animals like mollusks, fish, crabs, or prawns. Mammals and amphibians, any possums and flying foxes that live in the tops of the mangrove trees, and the frogs and lizards would like the cool.
Insects. Natural changes in the mangroves. Like all ecosystems, there are natural changes that occur in the mangroves. There are also man-made changes like dams stopping water flow, pollution, and even clearing the whole mangrove system. Also, the destruction of coral reefs and overfishing can have bad outcomes on the mangroves. For example, coral reefs provide the first level or barrier against the sea storms, meaning without them the mangroves would have to withstand much more damage. Overfishing can unbalance the food web of an ecosystem. Some of the natural changes that occur in the mangroves could be things that natural disasters cause. For example, flooding could cause change in the currents of water, temperature of water, or even the salinity of the water. Other changes in the mangrove ecosystem specifically are any variables of water, the temperature of the air, wind currents, and light. The wind has influence on the waves, which can cause erosion and harm to the mangrove structure. The salinity of the water can cause different distributions of different species of mangrove.
And more recently, changes in mangroves have been proposed to monitor change in coastal environments as indicators of global warming, climate change, storm effects, sea level change, pollution, and sedimentation rates. Adaptation. For mangroves to survive in the intertidal environment, they must be able to tolerate broad ranges of salinity, temperature, and moisture. Mangrove mud is low in oxygen and different species cope with this in a variety of ways. Red mangroves prop themselves above the water level with stilled roots and can then absorb air through pores in their bark. Black mangroves live on higher ground and have large numbers of pneumatophories, specialized root-like structures which stick up out of the soil like straws for breathing, which are also covered in pores, lenticels. Because of the limited fresh water available in salty intertidal soils, mangroves limit the amount of water they lose through their leaves. They can restrict the opening of their stomata, pores on the leaf surfaces. They also vary the orientation of their leaves to avoid the harsh midday sun and so reduce evaporation from the leaves. The biggest problem that mangroves face is nutrient uptake. Because the soil is perpetually waterlogged, there is little free oxygen. Anaerobic bacteria help produce nitrogen gas, soluble iron, inorganic phosphates, sulfides, and methane, which makes the soil much less nutritious and contributes to their rotten egg smell. Pneumatophores allow mangroves to absorb gases directly from the atmosphere, and other nutrients such as iron, from the poor soil. Mangroves store gases directly inside the roots, using them even when the roots are submerged during high tide. Because of the limited fresh water available in salty intertidal soils, mangroves limit the amount of water they lose through their leaves. They can restrict the opening of their stomata, pores on the leaf surfaces. They also vary the orientation of their leaves to avoid the harsh midday sun and so reduce evaporation from the leaves. The biggest problem that mangroves face is nutrient uptake. Because the soil is perpetually waterlogged, there is little free oxygen. Anaerobic bacteria help produce nitrogen gas, soluble iron, inorganic phosphates, sulfides, and methane, which makes the soil much less nutritious and contributes to their rotten egg smell. Pneumatophores allow mangroves to absorb gases directly from the atmosphere, and other nutrients such as iron, from the poor soil. Mangroves store gases directly inside the roots, using them even when the roots are submerged during high tide.
Mangroves are adapted to the saltwater environment and to anoxic and sulfidic-rich sediments. For example, some are recognized by their breathing roots which obtain oxygen directly from the atmosphere when exposed at low tide. Other special features of mangroves include buttresses and prop roots for support, salt excretion from leaf pores, and floating seedlings. Sheltered intertidal shorelines are also occupied by salt marshes, however salt marshes are generally dominant in more temperate and drier regions. Where seagrass beds are found adjacent to mangroves, many material links and shared plant and animal communities exist. Changes in the distribution of mangroves have been identified as an important indicator of broader environmental change for state of the environment reporting.
The ghost crab. The ghost crab, it is a type of crab of genus Ossipoda that can be seen crawling along sandy shores in many parts of the US and Brazil. As expected, it is a member of the decapod species. It is commonly seen on shores in many countries. This animal is also known as sand crab or white crab. These are also known as mole crabs. Distribution. Atlantic ghost crabs are found from Block Island, Rhode Island, and Nantucket, Massachusetts, northern Virginia beaches, to Santa Catarina, Brazil, on Fernando de Noronha, and Bermuda. This animal has a pale body color that is like the color of sand. This makes it nearly invisible when it crawls about over sand. It is because of this apparent invisibility that the crab has got its unique name. The name is also suggestive of the fact that the activities of this creature are mainly restricted to night. This animal has 5 pairs of legs. The first pair is called chelipeds and is shaped like claws. The legs, when jointly used, can make crabs move in any direction, forward, backward, or sideways. In male crabs of this species, one claw is slightly larger than the other. It has large black eyes that are supported on stalks. Its eyes help it see in any direction. There are horns attached to the end of the eyes of male crabs. It is by these horns that the gender of a crab is recognized. The eyes of these creatures are sensitive to changes in light. The large eyes of these crabs give them a wide field of vision. The eyesight of these creatures is very good. This helps them spot predators It is about 2 to 3 inches in size. This creature is found in sandy beaches of tropical as well as subtropical coasts. It can be found anywhere from the American Atlantic Sea, the Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea to coasts along the American Pacific and the Indo-Pacific. These crabs are usually found in sandy beaches and back shores where they live in burrows. Crabs usually burrow a deep hole to keep themselves cool during the daytime. They remain in burrows during daytime and when winter is at its coldest. It is omnivorous, meaning it feeds on both animals and plants. It can also devour other crabs and detritus. The creature feeds on snails, clams, turtle hatchlings, lizards and small crabs. Ghost crab foods also include organic matter. Ghost crabs generally look for food at night. This is also the time when they dig and repair their burrows. They search beaches for any animal or plant that has been washed ashore. It is rare to see these crabs during daytime as they are mainly active during the night. The strong hairy legs of this animal make it run very fast and achieve speeds of about 10 miles per hour. This makes this crab the fastest among all crustaceans. The crab has club-shaped eye stalks and it boasts of a 360 degrees vision. This helps it see and catch insects that are even in mid-air. It has the exceptional capability to shrink back its eyes into grooves located on the frontal area of its shell. Occasionally, the crabs go out into the sea to protect themselves from predators such as raccoons and birds. Crabs of this species usually engage in a combat that is non-contact. The combat style is more ritualistic in style and ends in contact in very rare cases. Overall, crab numbers were halved in disturbed areas, but contrasts between impact and control sites were not necessarily consistent over time and varied between different levels of the shore. Stronger and more consistent effect sizes were recorded on the upper shore than further seawards. In addition to lowering crab densities, human disturbance also caused shifts in intertidal distributions, with a greater proportion of individuals occurring lower on the shore in the impacted beach sections. The number of visible burrow openings also changed in response to weather conditions, temperature and wind. We demonstrate that spatial contrasts of burrow counts are broadly useful to indicate the existence of a human-induced disturbance effect on urban beaches. We also highlight a number of critical, hitherto unknown, issues in the application of this monitoring technique. These encompass three broad dimensions: a need for standardized protocols, unresolved causal links between observed patterns and putative pressures, and uncertainties of how organisms respond specifically to both natural and human changes of environmental conditions on sandy shores. Overall, crab numbers were halved in disturbed areas, but contrasts between impact and control sites were not necessarily consistent over time and varied between different levels of the shore. Stronger and more consistent effect sizes were recorded on the upper shore than further seawards. In addition to lowering crab densities, human disturbance also caused shifts in intertidal distributions, with a greater proportion of individuals occurring lower on the shore in the impacted beach sections. The number of visible burrow openings also changed in response to weather conditions, temperature and wind. We demonstrate that spatial contrasts of burrow counts are broadly useful to indicate the existence of a human-induced disturbance effect on urban beaches. We also highlight a number of critical, hitherto unknown, issues in the application of this monitoring technique. These encompass three broad dimensions: a need for standardized protocols, unresolved causal links between observed patterns and putative pressures, and uncertainties of how organisms respond specifically to both natural. Sandy beaches comprise one of the most important coastal resources worldwide, providing habitats to threatened vertebrates, supporting underappreciated invertebrate biodiversity, and delivering crucial ecosystem services and economic benefits to mankind. Monitoring of the natural resource condition of sandy beaches and assessments of the ecological impacts of human disturbance are, however, rare on sandy shores. Because a crucial step in developing beach monitoring is to identify and test biological indicators, we evaluated the utility of using population densities of ghost crabs, genus Ossipode, to measure how beach biota respond to human pressures. Densities of crabs estimated via burrow counts were quantified at two sites exposed to high and low levels of human disturbance on an urban beach in eastern Australia. Human disturbance consisted of pedestrian trampling and shoreline armoring, which led to the loss of dune habitat. As you can see, mangroves are a very important and significant part of not only the environment, but to human communities as well. Without them, all the biotic factors living in them would suffer, and the coastlines would experience much more severe outcomes, like erosion, from coastal storms. Also, the nutrients from the mangrove ecosystems create the base of the food web for other ecosystems, so if their removal continued, not just the mangroves would suffer, but other ecosystems. 35% of the world's mangroves have already been cleared. Anonymous, 2015, and we don't want to lose any more. Reconsider the removal of mangroves when considering any development applications, or plans to clear vegetation, and come up with ways to stop the clearing of the mangroves. Stop clearing the mangroves.